Grab your calculator, grab your pen and paper, and grab your coffee. Let's talk numbers. I'm going to tell you how much money I made in January. I'm going to tell you how much money I spent, why I spent it, where I spent it, and what I bought. But first, and this might have become a weekly tradition, let's open up some packages and see what I bought for my truck. First thing, I've been waiting for this for a while. So if you're thinking about getting a second truck, order your second ELD sooner rather than later because it takes a couple weeks to arrive in the mail. Got my Keep Truckin' ELD, and of course we need the cable to hook it up. And I got my dash cam. I don't have a dash cam for my box truck, but spoiler, I'm not going to talk about it in this video, but I might be getting a second truck. The second truck will have a dash cam. Maybe I'll talk about my second truck next week or in 2 weeks, I'm not sure. I got one more thing. Let's take a look. Yes, I got an OtterBox case for my iPad. If you remember in last week's video, I just bought an iPad for my truck for GPS. Looks like the OtterBox case just came in the mail. One thing I do want to talk about, buying supplies and equipment for your truck. It's important to try to do it in advance. Don't wait until the last minute, because if you're going to have your driver or you yourself go to a truck stop to buy something like an iPad cover, you're probably going to spend $10, $20, $30 more than you would if you just plan ahead 2 weeks in advance and buy it on Amazon or buy it online or buy it from Walmart. I know it's not possible to always plan ahead and buy things in advance, but just try to be proactive and think about what you're going to need in 2 weeks, next month, and 2 months. That way you're not spending extra money on convenience and buying stuff from a truck stop. With all that being said, let's talk numbers. Cue the intro.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate.
Like I said in the beginning of this video, grab some coffee, grab your pen and paper, and grab your calculator. We are going to deep dive into the numbers, January profit and loss statement. Let's see how much money we made and how much money we spent. But first, to get started, let's lay the groundwork. Let's give some background information on my stats for last month. I'm gonna put it up on the screen here. Total loaded miles, 6,895, and I was running from January 7th to January 26th. So my driver was OTR for 20 days. Any deadhead that's more than 50 miles, so I paid my driver for 7,145 miles. This is a little alarming. I was not aware of this until I prepared this document, but total miles was 8,508. which is significantly more than loaded miles plus deadhead. So I'm concerned about that. I will need to do a deep dive into my ELD to see what happened. I made $14,100 on my loaded miles, which comes out to be about $2.04 per mile. I have that $19,000 on the screen there, and we are going to get into that. So there's the background information. Next, we're going to talk about the money I made, invoices, revenue, sales. And I want to touch on your invoices real quick. Obviously, I am a bookkeeper by day, so invoices I take very seriously. But what's really important, and I see this in a lot of the trucking clients that I work with, and I even heard it whenever I was working with TAFs, my factoring company. Whenever you have a new invoice, TAFs even recommended to me, just use the load number, use the reference number from the broker as your invoice number. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would have your own system for numbering your invoices. To me, what makes the most sense is 2022-001, 2022-002 for your second load that you ran in January. Orange on the top and blue on the bottom. And this is very important to make a note of. Sometimes whenever you book loads that are not factorable, they won't be paid for 30 days. So I might have received $19,000 of cash in January. However, I ran a lot of loads in November and December that were not factorable. So I ended up getting paid 30 days later. So you can see on the left-hand side, those are all the dates that I delivered the load. All of the ones in orange were delivered last year. All of the ones in blue were delivered this year. The reason why that's important is because all of my expenses that I'm going to talk about were incurred in January. So it's not really fair to talk about my total revenue received in January when I'm only talking about my expenses from January. Bear with me. I know it can get complicated. I'll try to break it down so that way you can understand and you can plan your box truck business on my numbers. Like I was talking about with the invoice numbering system, you can see it there on the screen, 2021-38 all the way down to 2022-006, and then I did run one Amazon load in the first week of January. Obviously the amount paid, self-explanatory, and the date that I was paid. In January I received $19,810 in cash, but my true revenue was only $14,100. So keep that in mind as we go through the video. Okay, now we've talked about income. Now let's look at all of my expenses. I'm gonna go line by line. This is all straight from my QuickBooks. This is how much money I actually spent in January. I pay my dispatcher 10% of all of the loads he books. So he booked $14,000 worth of loads. Therefore, I paid him $1,410, 10%. Next, I want to talk about how much I pay my driver. You might be a traditional owner-operator, maybe you are the driver. So this is not really specifically for you. This is more so for all of my owners who own the truck and hire a driver. So I don't drive my truck, so I hired a driver. It's actually my brother. He drives my truck for me. So I pay my driver 55 cents per mile. And before you guys comment, before you freak out, I understand that is higher than almost all of the box truck drivers and some of the CDL tractor drivers. I made a mistake whenever I started my box truck business. I did not know how much to pay my driver, so I went with 55 cents per mile. If I could go back in time, I would start at 45 cents per mile. And that's my biggest recommendation for you. If you're gonna hire a box truck driver, non-CDL, I recommend you pay them 45 cents per mile or 20 to 25% of revenue. I paid my driver 55 cents per mile for 7,145 miles, which equals $3,930 in January just for driving my truck. Now this is another big challenge for box truck drivers who want to go over the road. If you're running Amazon, you might just be doing local runs, so you're home every night. If you're doing expedited runs, you're definitely home every night because you're probably not driving more than 200 miles, but I want to go over the road. So I'm going 500 miles, 1,000 miles, all the way across the country. So the unique challenge we have is, where does your driver sleep? Because almost all of the box trucks that I've seen do not have at least DOT approved sleeper cabs. I pay my driver $75 a night as a hotel stipend. He can use the money to pay for his hotel. He can do basically whatever he wants. So I don't reimburse my driver for actual hotel receipts. I don't use a credit card to pay for my driver's hotel. I just wanted to make it simple and just give him $75 a night no matter what he does. It's up to him what hotel he wants to sleep in. I only pay for 5 nights out of the week. So if he is over the road, it is our agreement that he will cover Saturday and Sunday hotel fees. I will just do Monday through Friday. So I spent $825 for hotels. Next, I want to talk about fuel. Fuel prices have gone up significantly since when I started. I started back in July. It was like $3.60 was the national average. The national average, as you know, is closer to $4 a mile. No matter what the fuel cost is, it's important that you know your miles per gallon. That way you can plan your cost per mile. If you don't know how to calculate your cost per mile, I have a bunch of videos where I talk about how to calculate that. The cost of fuel is always going to fluctuate, but your truck's miles per gallon probably won't fluctuate a whole lot. So my truck gets about 8 miles per gallon, and I spend about $3.80 on average for fuel. So last month in January, I spent close to $4,000 just in fuel. And if you have a fuel card, that's what's really nice about only using one fuel card. So I use Fuelman, and I talk about it in a lot of my videos, but they give me a monthly report. Fuelman gives me a monthly report on every time my driver fills up. He enters the odometer reading, and I know exactly how many miles I've gone in between fill-ups. I know exactly how much money I'm spending. So I'm able to look at my miles per gallon straight from my Fuelman reports. Super helpful information, really helps me to plan what my cost per mile threshold is. Okay, this is a hot topic. I talk about it a lot, but my next expense that I want to talk about is factoring. And I'm locked into a 12-month contract with my factoring company. I factor all my loans through them because I don't really have a choice. They did charge me 3%, but then whenever I stopped using their fuel card, they charged me 3.5%. And what they didn't tell me is there was a $10 ACH fee. So if I just factor $1,000, they charge me $10 to transfer the money to my checking account. So there's an extra 1%. So on average, I spend about 4% every single time I factor a load. Last month, based on $14,000 of invoices, I paid a little over $500 just in factoring fees. I'm trying to get away from my factoring company. I have a line of credit that I'm going to utilize for cash flow. I'm going to get away from the factoring company as soon as my contract is up in July. This is one of the last big expenses that I have every month apart from fuel and paying for my driver. This is insurance. I have a pretty good insurance policy on my box truck and it's $1,000, a little bit more than $1,000. Insurance, from what I understand, is primarily based on your credit score, the value of your truck, and your driving record. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an insurance agent, but from a little bit I do understand of insurance. That's what it's primarily based on. The biggest surprise for me is that it's based on your credit score. $1,000 a month is pretty standard when it comes to box truck insurance. I've seen $1,500 a month. I haven't seen a whole lot lower than $1,000, maybe $800. But if you're thinking about starting a box truck business and you're trying to plan for insurance, I would plan between $1,000 and $1,500 every month for insurance. All right, now let's talk about miscellaneous supplies. Looks like I spent $60, $63 in January on supplies, and I think that was windshield wipers and 100-foot extension cord. Fun fact, you need to plug in your truck when it gets really cold. That way you can start and it keeps the fluids moving. And like I said in the beginning of the video, try to buy these miscellaneous supplies in advance. That way you're not buying them from truck stops and paying a premium on convenience. It's not always possible, but try your best to buy these supplies in advance. Next, I paid for software. And you might have a QuickBooks subscription, you might have a DAT subscription. My software expenses were $15 for a 1099 filing fee based on 2021 expenses, and I pay like $10 a month on a trucker GPS. Next up, we have registration. This is an expense that does not happen every month, but it just so happens in January I renewed my UCR registration like you have to every single year. Other registration fees might be obviously your truck registration, but I spent $61 on my UCR annual registration. Okay, this is a big one, and this hurts my soul to the core. I think I made a mistake. I said insurance was my last big expense, but clearly I forgot about one of the biggest expenses, and that is maintenance. A couple things here. I have an old truck. My truck is 2010. I only spent $20,000 on the truck, so I got it at a cheap price. However, old truck, cheap truck comes with a cost, and that cost is repairs and maintenance. I budget and I plan for 10% of miles driven. So with that, 10% of my miles driven should have only been $800 in January for repairs. That's what I budget. And a couple things are happening here. Maybe I had a really bad month, or maybe I'm miscalculating my maintenance expense due to the fact that my truck is 12 years old. But I spent $3,000 last month on maintenance. I got hit pretty hard with a couple things. I took my truck to my local shop and they got me with an oil change, but they found a long list of other things. And it might be due to the fact that I've been getting my oil changed at over-the-road truck stops like Love's and TA. They were just doing a real quick oil change. They weren't really checking a whole lot else. So I took it to my mechanic and I had them do a thorough check with everything, and they ended up charging me $2,000 for the oil change and everything else, all the other miscellaneous things that they found wrong with the truck. I'm not a mechanic. This is such a difficult area because you have to trust your mechanic that he's not ripping you off, but it's so expensive. It really hurts my soul to spend $2,000 at the mechanic whenever I just went in for a simple oil change, hoping to only spend $300, and he found a long list of things that were putting me allegedly putting me out of DOT regulation. So what am I gonna do? Of course I'm gonna tell them to fix it. I don't wanna be driving around with an unsafe, illegal truck, but man, $2,000, that hurts. 200 bucks on tire chains, that's inevitable. It's winter, there's snow on the ground. You need to have tire chains for your truck. I spent $200. And the last thing that went wrong with my truck last month was my batteries. Because it was so cold, my truck was in North Dakota, so all 3 of my batteries died. But I spent $600, $450 on 3 brand new batteries, about $150 a piece. So hopefully these batteries last 2 or 3 years. Okay, so now that we're done with maintenance, we're coming to the end here of our list of expenses. We have tolls, and I think tolls total were $140 for the month. I use EasyPass, and the money just comes out of my credit card automatically to refill the EasyPass. I don't really know how much to budget for tolls. I think I originally planned on like 5% of total miles, but that seems to be way off. If you're driving in New Jersey and New York, obviously your tolls are going to be a lot more expensive. I don't really have it down to a science. I just know that the money comes out of my credit card and fills my EasyPass, and it's about 100 to 200 bucks a month. Next, I want to talk about depreciation. I talk about it all the time. You might have a loan for your truck. You might be transferring $1,000 to your loan every month. That is not a business expense. That should not show up on your profit and loss. However, the interest you pay on your loan, that will show up on your profit and loss. I don't have a loan for this truck, so I'm not paying any interest, but I do have depreciation. And the way you calculate depreciation, take the total initial purchase price of the truck and divide it by 60, because a truck has a useful life of 5 years. So you need to take the total value of the truck and divide it by 5 years and divide that by 12 months, and that is your monthly depreciation cost. For me, my truck was like $20,000. That divided by 60 is $360 per month in depreciation. Even though I bought my truck with cash, you still want to account for depreciation. Even if you buy your truck with a loan, it's still the same thing. You account for depreciation based on 5 years useful life of the asset. I talk about it all the time because it's one of the things that's most often overlooked because it's not a cash transaction. Final numbers are on the screen here. Total cash received for income was $19,000. After all the expenses, my net income was $4,300, which is awesome. That's a great month. However, like I said in the beginning, it's not entirely accurate. This is the last talking point for the video. Like I said, my numbers are not right. And this is why it's so important that you're doing your bookkeeping, you're looking at your budget, you're seeing how you're doing, you're managing your cash flow. You need to be looking at the numbers to see if your business is actually profitable. Income, $19,000. Expenses, $15,000. Net income, $4,000. But like I said, not right, because I got paid for $5,000 worth of loads that were delivered in 2021. So with all that being said, take out those 2021 loads and I'm left with only $14,000 of actual revenue earned in January. All of my expenses are true to January. So take $14,000, subtract $15,000 of expenses. That's not good math. That's not good business. That's a net loss. I lost $1,400 last month. Two things. Like I said, I'm paying my driver 55 cents per mile. I understand that's a little bit high, but that's not going to change. Second, my maintenance was $3,000. That is the most I've ever spent on maintenance in a single month. If I would have had a normal month of maintenance, $2,000, maybe $1,500, I would have at least broken even. If I would have had a good month for maintenance, I would have been profitable